Hello, hello, hello.
Hi, how we doing?
Good.
Good.
Just want to make sure I was coming through.
Yes, you are.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Well, I see a couple more commissioners, so I'll be promoting them.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mills did express her regrets that she may have to miss most of the meeting this evening
Oh no.
because of a prior, I think, work-related engagement that was difficult to not attend. A lot of members of the public this evening.
Yes, it's a house party event.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
You could have brought us some music, Mix Kelly. That would have been nice.
Uh,
Do you want me to email you my house party Spotify?
there's a special setting I think you need in Zoom for that, and I always forget what it is.
I don't
Um,
I think you just have to set it that you can play through, but after that you can do it. I don't know if your version restricts it. They don't want you to have as much fun.
I'm just looking for Councilmember Dish and Commissioner Clark. But I can promote them as they join. You can start the meeting at your discretion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that sounds good. We'll get started. Welcome to the September 12th working session of the Ann Arbor Planning Commission. And I'm calling this meeting to order, and we will head to public comment. So please raise your hand or call in with persons may speak for 3 minutes, and please state your name and address for the record. Thank you. Do we have anybody would like to publicly speak?
We do, if you'll just give me a moment to pull up our timer and take a look at the participants this evening. I'm seeing a number of hands raised. So let me get those in the order that they are raised in.
Great, thank you.
Our first caller this evening is Adam Juszkiewicz. You have 3 minutes to address the commission.
Hi, my name is Adam Juszkiewicz, 1430 Las Vegas Drive in the 4th Ward. I am calling in because I noticed the 125 South Main building on the agenda for tonight, and I think this is really interesting building. I think it'll be if it's built at this height, it would be the tallest building in Ann Arbor, but contrary to some headlines that I've seen about it, calling it a skyscraper, I really think that it's, looking at kind of the bigger picture of buildings in the country and even in Michigan. I think this would just barely edge into the top 50 buildings in Michigan, pushing the Ford building out of 50th place, which is a 1909 19-story building in downtown Detroit. So, really fairly modest as far as taller buildings go. And I am really interested to see what the petitioners have to show us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller.
Our next caller is phone number ending in 534. You may need to unmute. You have 3 minutes to address the commission.
Good evening. This is Tom Stolberg calling from 1202 Davis Street in Lower Town, Ann Arbor.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's very difficult to hear you. there a way to get closer to
Yeah.
your microphone?
I have an earbud. Can you hear me?
Mr. Stallberg, yeah, it's very muffled and faint. Very difficult to hear
All
you.
right, I'm on a speaker. Is this better now?
Oh, much better. Thank you.
All right, thank you for helping me out there. So I want to call about PUDs in general. Going back to 2017, we had a PUD that didn't happen at Lower Town. Let me first say that PUDs are a tool. They're a tool in our law, in our UDC. They're a flexible development option, and they're totally appropriate and can work if they're done right, if we follow the law, if we follow the intent of the law. They could be used poorly as well. In the case of the Lower Town, we didn't have a PUD where we should have had one. We crafted a PUD in disguise at the time, and there were voices essentially saying that PUDs were not viable back then, which allowed that development to avoid 93 units of affordable housing or $9 million in affordable housing funds. Then a month later, the Glen PUD was approved for about $500,000 in affordable housing funds. So it's a bit of an inconsistency. And the Glen by now is called Vanguard, by the way, now. And similarly, when the Garnet was up for approval, not as a PUD, but an inappropriate conditional zoning, it was turned down. It came back as a PUD. We got $9,000 per unit for the affordable housing for an appropriate use of a PUD. Consistency is important in zoning, very important. We have 5 corners, which is zone C1AR at the corner of State Packard and up to Arch. That's zone C1AR now, but they're asking for a PUD. But then Southtown came in, zoned R4C, several blocks south of there, away from the campus business district, asking for C1AR. We were told that a PUD was not appropriate there because there was an available zoning category. So that's inconsistent with other things we've heard. It's inconsistent with what's going on at 5 Corners. I believe that was an inaccurate statement about Southtown, but that was used as part of the justification for not approving a PUD. What did we lose there? The same plan could have been approved as a PUD with 33 units of affordable housing. Not sure what the equivalent for the payment in lieu to the Affordable Housing Fund would have been there. 415 West Washington, base zoning there that was compared to was D2. D2 caps out at 60 feet, but it's in a historic district and you're not supposed to use the premiums for D2 to go beyond that in in the historic district. That's part of our UDC. So a PUD was used inappropriately to get around that law. You're not supposed to use a PUD to get around what otherwise would be prohibited. That statement itself is in our UDC. So I would say that it's highly inappropriate that 415 used a PUD to go to 70 feet, getting around both the letter and the intent of our own laws. So we have 2 PUDs here tonight. Are they good or bad? Well, on the one hand, they should be judged on their own merit. On the other hand,
I'm sorry to interrupt
they
you.
need to-
Your time is.
they need to be evaluated for their
ended.
legality. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other callers?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, great. We will close public comment and we will move on to our first PUD pre-petition conference.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
a caller did just raise their hand.
Oh, well, I think that's fine. Let's reopen it and
Okay.
I would like to hear from as many people as possible. Thank you.
Antonio, you have permission to address the commission.
Antonio, I think you are on mute. We can't hear you just yet.
Okay. Am I there?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes. Hi. My name's Antonio. Yeah. I have a home at 610 West Washington Street. Regarding the 125 West Washington, I get proposal. I think that I believe that is a very prominent corner of the city. Probably maybe second to, I would say, Liberty and Main Street. The PUD will. I believe um will bring people and businesses back into our downtown. I think that there's a lot of vacancies because we don't have enough things there to bring people there, or like there's not enough residences, or there's not enough um uh beliefs that there isn't as much of a investment. I think, and this huge amount of a investment can do a lot um for kind of our relatively small downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio. And to clarify, I believe he was speaking about 125 South Main and not 125 West Washington.
Oh,
Is that-
yes.
Okay.
Yes, I apologize.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Abrams, did you want to add? Gotcha. All right, thank you. All right, any other callers? We'll give it a few seconds. Okay, we are going to move to, we're closing public comment, and we are moving to the PUD pre-petition conference for 228 Packard, the PUD zoning district and site plans. So we'll head to petitioner presentation. Please go ahead at your convenience.
Good evening, Planning Commission members. I hope you can hear me.
We can. Hi, Brad. Mr. Moore.
Hello, excellent. And
Can I interrupt for 1 moment?
of course,
Yeah, I just want a small bit of housekeeping. Has everyone from the team been promoted that should be promoted?
is Mitch,
We have
Are we-
Matthew Axman, Neil Reardon, and yourself, looks like.
I just
Okay.
wondered if the subtext representative Mitchell Court is also in the waiting room.
Okay, I think, okay. All right, thank you for that bit of housekeeping. Carry on, I will mute myself.
Again, good evening. Jay Bradley Moore here with Jay Bradley Moore and Associates Architects. Let me just take a brief second to welcome Commissioner Weatherby back. Good to see you doing your civic duty. I have with me tonight a new project, a new PUD, but it's with an experienced set of team members. My client here is Subtext Living. You may remember we recently got a project, a PUD, approved over at 721 South Forest, and they're actively moving forward on that project right now. You also may recognize ESG Architects, another team member. I worked with them on the 616 East Washington project. And so we've got an experienced cadre of team members here on this project, which based on the number of bus trips per day, is got to be qualifying as the most transit-oriented development to be proposed in the city of Ann Arbor. You'll probably have seen the bus route map that we included in our presentation package, and you can see that there's a substantial number of bus trips per day that travel past this site. This site is adjacent to an area of town which is currently undergoing a significant transformation by U of M. Some of the plans have already been released, and I noticed that Bell Field is now a construction site, which will transform this area of town into a nexus of student life. And my client Subtext is proposing a project adjacent to this this new nexus of student life that will be predominantly geared towards housing students. We're grateful for U of M in their attempt to add more student housing, but we know that with their growth in enrollment, what they're adding still won't meet all of the needs. So we're glad to make this proposal to do that. There's a significant cadre of community benefits that we proposed for this project, much paralleling what was proposed and approved at 721 South Forest. This site is a big enough footprint that we hope to be able to incorporate geothermal as an element in our HVAC design, whereas 721 Forest, having a much smaller footprint, didn't prove out to be practical for that. Of course, we expect integrated solar panels. We're going to be doing a LEED Silver project, designing to those standards. There will be, of course, the affordable housing contribution, as Mr. Stolman mentioned, which will not be insignificant, significantly larger probably than the 721 forest, although we haven't gotten down to the granular detail of exactly what that number will be. It will be significant. We also believe it will help the city in replacing some of the tax revenue lost when the university purchased the rest of the properties between 5th and Division Street south of Madison, to help reduce that hole in the city's pocket, so to speak. It will, of course, have accessible housing. One of the things I just wanted to bring up real quick about the staff report on the FAR is that 36% FAR, through a quirk of changes in the city zoning requirement, includes our parking deck, because the way the UDC was written, it said any parking above what is required, you have to count as FAR. In the previous projects that have been developed in the city in D1 and D2, there was always an element of required parking, which was exempt from that FAR calculations. But now that no parking is required, it really is kind of skews this project in comparison to others, because if you compare it to others, they didn't have to count their parking as part of their FAR. Just a quick diatribe there on the quirk that's happened in the changes in the code. I'd like to turn it over to ESG real quick so that they can run through how we've organized the project and talk about some of the design elements, and hopefully get your feedback.
Thank you, Brad. Neil Reardon with ESG Architecture. I'm joined by my colleague, Matthew Axman. I'll turn it over to him. Yeah, he's the lead designer on this project, and he'll have some images and some exhibits to explain our design. But the site here, just to orient everybody, it's nearly the whole block, bounded by 4th Avenue, 5th Avenue, and then Packard on the northeast and Madison on the south. You can see the U of M campus land there in yellow. A few site orientation photos. Won't spend much time on these. You guys know these, but these are some projects in the vicinity within 2 or 3 blocks of our site, as well as here's a few more. Many of them on the Packard and Main corridors. The new quad at El Bell Field, as mentioned, and then just a couple site photos that are very adjacent to our site. They're at 4th and Madison, looking east on Madison, and then 5th and Madison there looking west. 2 diagrams here. The one on the top, you're looking southeastward to our site. So our site's in the foreground there with the green dots, and then you can see where we're putting in some of that future development there. And then just the basically the same depiction from a different angle, looking back towards downtown, with the site there on the left and a few other proposed buildings in there, along with all of the existing buildings in the downtown vicinity and at the main university grounds. So we overlaid some transit on here to kind of put it in context. And one of the things is we almost covered the whole site there with the map. And so you can see we've highlighted that in the lime green, but then also with a red circle there on where our site location is. So as Brad already mentioned, super well served by transit, and just a great site because of that. Existing zoning overlay, you can see here the current zoning classifications, and then I think in our document we are proposing a PUD, so we can get into that at a later time in this meeting if necessary. Just to orientate you on the site plan, and then we have a few other diagrams to take you through. The darker portion here is being proposed as a 12-story massing or building. You'll see that in a moment. The next version of gray there, where we are on the top side towards 5th Avenue, is being proposed as a 7-story building, and then we have a parking structure with a pool and terrace on top of it, which is about 5 to 6 stories. So the site has lots of topography, changes in grade, and so part of the big drivers on this site plan are those grade changes. We'll depict those for you in a moment, but we did turn the plan sideways here. So north is to the left in this, and if you've seen this packet, you've probably orientated yourself already, but just for the purposes of depicting the rather longer site on the north to south, we've turned it sideways here. We have 2 kind of vehicular curb cuts proposed, and those are a double curb cut on the one way on Fifth Avenue there, which would serve as a drop off for the entirety of the project. And then we're handling trash and other service with a curb cut on the Fourth Avenue side, and then a direct access to the parking garage there also from the Fourth Avenue side. Important to note here, we'll depict a little later, but we are planning for walk-up units on primarily all sides of the project. And we do that for the first floor units, although, as I mentioned, the grade changes as we go. So the first floor ends up being a different floor in many instances. And at this point, I think I'll hand it over to Matt, and he'll explain a few more diagrams on our plan.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Neil, and thank everybody for joining this evening. Just to really quickly kind of talk about overall massing and location of massing. So as Neil had mentioned, we're really broken down into three primary components labeled here as A, B, C. So A is our circular shaped element, which is that 12-story building called a field hockey stick that runs north-south along Fifth Avenue, and then a little leg kicks out past Packard, and then the parking element kind of situated there in the middle on located at C. So that houses the parking, but then on top of that is the roof and pool terrace, and then a double height amenity that services the remainder of the building. So as you kind of note, the highest elevation is to our plan left, and the lowest elevation is to our plan right. One other thing to note here is overall sort of fenestration, porosity, opacity is really sort of loose at this point. So one of the things we like to engage both the community and the commissioners on is like overall design of fenestration and materiality. So something we can talk about a little bit here, but we try to stay pretty loose at this early stage in order to show that there is some malleability in the overall look and feel of these things. Again, to kind of talk about the overall site section. So one of the strategies we employed pretty early was using the topography as a way to reduce overall bulk and mass. So the higher portion of the building, the higher element is actually situated on the lowest portion of the site, such that if you were standing on Packard, that 12-story building appears to be 30 feet shorter than what it actually is in reality. So we're kind of using the site's natural geometries to reduce the overall feeling of bulk and mass. To display that a slightly different way here, you can kind of see those three components over in a cross section. So for instance, that parking structure and the leg that goes out along Packer are both 80 feet, but as you can tell, that parking structure would appear 20 feet shorter given the grade drop off as we move halfway through the site. Plans, we'll run through these pretty quickly, but these first ones are pretty important in terms of ingress and egress of both pedestrians and vehicles. So the first floor noted here is really mostly that first section of the tower, and where the lobby amenity is located on the corner of Fifth and Madison. And then we also have that serviceway, and this is really just to get those service vehicles off of the street and into our site, both as an opportunity to hide those elements, and then also just to make sure that all of that infrastructure and maneuvering is happening on our site. As we move up, we get our first entry into the parking from the 4th Avenue location. And then as we make our way even further, we get to our primary drop off on 5th Avenue. And this is really envisioned as a come in, drop off, deliver your pizzas, drop your Uber drop off. And really this is in hopes to reduce congestion along 5th Avenue. So the idea being that we are handling most of that congestion within our own site and keeping 5th Avenue moving as it should. And then as we make our way up the rest of the floor plates, we get to our more typical levels. You can kind of see again that circular shaped building, and then the field hockey stick kind of moving to the north with the parking situated in the middle there. On level 9 is where we get to the confluence of the parking structure, and the pool terrace and building amenity is located really at a kind of a confluence of these two elements so that all the users can come to them and utilize that. And then again, the same site plan, we're going to talk a little bit about pedestrian activity and just overall how we're meeting the street. So one of the important things that we know in this community is walkability and how the building addresses the streetscape and really maintaining that high quality built environment street grade. So we've put together a couple of diagrams as we move forward that really utilize the 883 perspective, which is a 8-foot amenity zone, be it tree grades, tree tree plantings, bike racks, other site furnishings, an 8-foot sidewalk, and then a 3-foot frontage zone that either is to a walk-up unit, or in the case of an more active use at grade, the frontage zone that would abut an awning type structure to greet the pedestrians from the sidewalk. And then these last 2 slides here are really just a sort of macro picture of the way that this building kind of fits into its surroundings, with both existing content and then the couple of new elements that we have, including the phase 2 residential quad, new L-Bell fields, and then the proposed building at 350 South 5th. In the same image, but looking south. And then with that, we would love to open it up to questions, comments, and a dialogue regarding the project. Appreciate your time.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. Yeah, I think we're right on time with 10 minutes. I do want to keep this discussion to no more than about 30 minutes or so, because I know we have another big one, and try to keep this to at least 9 o'clock. So with that, do we have a faculty presentation staff, or is this just going straight into discussion? Alexis?
Thank you. First, I'll say my name is Alexis DeLeo. I am a city planner with the planning department. I suspect there are some new callers to a planning commission working session. This meeting is a discussion. This is not a vote, but we are providing some feedback and some guidance to the applicants moving forward. I did prepare a staff memo. I feel that the applicant team did a fantastic job of addressing the proposal, and they've hit on many of the proposed public benefits that would come from this PUD. So in the interest of time, I won't repeat them or hammer away at them. I will say that we are at a crossroads in our planning time, and we are about to undertake work on developing a new comprehensive plan. We do have an existing on the books master plan, I should say comprehensive plan. But it is slightly outdated, hence why we're doing a new comprehensive plan. But even though it's outdated, does not mean it's worthless or it should be completely disregarded. But I would say regarding this project, we are more in favor than ever of increasing density. We are, many people have pointed out that we are in a housing crisis, and so housing of all kinds and for all markets is needed in our city. Our mayor has said we just need more Ann Arborites, and that does include a student population or housing for a student population. I would point out something from regarding their public benefits. They are hitting the sustainability notes that we typically look for on new projects, and particularly with planned unit developments that deviate from the underlying zoning. They are hitting the affordability components that we look for when you are increasing density over the underlying density, but they're doing it with a contribution in lieu. And I will throw out one comment for discussion, because the discussion is kind of supposed to be about the benefits. We can talk about the design during the site plan review phase if this moves on to that. But throwing something out for left field in terms of the benefits, I wonder if the applicants, instead of so much of an affordable housing contribution, there is a portion of this block that is not yet included in this project. I wonder if somehow that land, instead of a future phase being for a future development, could that land be somehow given to the city, specifically the Housing Commission, and that they could develop on it. Our biggest challenge in developing affordable housing from our Housing Commission is competing with the private market and just buying land. And I wonder if that could be a public benefit, if the PUD maybe should be the entire block for the zoning district. I'm not talking about changing the design of the building, but it is coming from left field. I was inspired by some of the other House Party comments this morning. But I'll just leave that. But the purpose of tonight is to talk about their proposed public benefits. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alexis. And as Alexis did say, this is just a pre-petition meeting. Yeah, no decisions are being made. I know that we do have quite a bit of attendees. With that, I will open it up to discussion to the commissioners. We have Commissioner White.
Thank you. Just to get us going, thanks so much to the team for bringing this project to us. I was delighted to see this plan in our packet today. I was surprised, and I would love if you could speak to why you have a 1-to-1 ratio for housing and parking, especially since you did such a fantastic job of including a transportation map, which when I first saw it, I was like, oh, they're developing a subway for Ann Arbor. This is going to be fantastic. And then I realized it was bus lines. So it just feels incongruent to be dedicating so much of the site to parking, and at the same time speaking so highly of how accessible to our bus infrastructure this site would be. So I must be missing something, and I would love to hear why this design decision was made at this time.
Yeah, I can jump in. So as far as parking, I think right now we're right around 25 to 30% parked is where we are. So 1-to-1, I don't know if you were looking at maybe the units as opposed to the beds, but if you look at overall residents, we are somewhere, I mean, it's flexing a little bit, but yeah, it's about 25 to 30%, which we feel is a pretty good ratio based on just feedback in the city and the location. So yeah, I don't know if that was maybe just a misunderstanding, or
No, I mean, it wasn't a misunderstanding for me because I wasn't counting the beds, I was counting the units. So you noted that it's one parking space per unit. And I think in our code, when we did have parking minimums, it was based on units. It wasn't based on beds. So there would be no way for us to actually read a site plan or a proposal assuming beds to parking. It would always have been units to parking. So I don't think I misunderstood that. I think my question stands. Why are you proposing a 1-to-1 parking ratio here? That just seems out of scope. It's more than anything I think we've seen in the last several months here at the planning table.
So I think again, if you look at it as a per resident number on the site, and the 1-to-1 per unit is a little bit off when it comes to student oriented projects because we have a lot of larger format units. So in your typical multifamily, it's like 1s and 2s, maybe some 3s. Whereas here we have 1s, 2s, all the way up to 4s and 5s. So when you're looking at it per resident, we are 25 to 30%. I think on our Forest project, we were somewhere around like 15 to 20%. So we are slightly higher here. I think part of it is we're trying to figure out what the balance is. It's a little bit different location. We feel like the 25% is probably where we want to be just from a marketability standpoint. But it also comes down to design. You know, I think the design, and Matt or Neil can go into it a little bit more, but the parking garage needs minimum dimensions. So it's not as much we're maxing out the site from a parking standpoint. I think the parking has its minimum requirements, which we're utilizing now, and then it's just stacked as you go up. And I think we've stacked it to the point where we've got it to that 25% of the residents, which we feel is a good ratio for the market.
Yeah, just to add to what Mitch is annotating there, in plan, typically we do tuck parking underneath the residential footprint in these buildings. We are not doing that here. Actually, we're building a freestanding zone of parking, if you will, and when that happens, we are able to be a little bit more efficient with the stalls per square foot. So that does help us to allow for a little bit more parking on at 25%, as Mitch notes, on a per bed basis.
Commissioner Salve.
So maybe I'll expand on that and just say that how staff presented it as meeting our sustainability and affordability goals. Vehicle miles traveled is a major component of both of those things. And so to park this more than your previous projects, the development encourages more residents to have cars and thus use cars. And so I think that's where meeting our sustainability and affordability goals, right? Because housing costs include transportation costs, the cost of rent, and the cost of owning a car versus other options. And so that's where I don't think the baseline of the project meets some of our goals relative to what we might need to measure as the benefits under this PUD. So I'll just be really much more direct and say, to see the benefits, one of them is reducing vehicle miles traveled, and a large parking deck is not aligned with a lot of our community goals. So we'll have to see, significantly more benefits to offset if this is necessary for the project, right? I definitely support all of the housing. I also think it kills half of the street on Fifth when the parking deck fronts the street instead of activating it. So it seems problematic at this point that it's creating, not just like providing to make the project feasible, which I understand, like you need probably some at this point, but I think it's causing some harm relative to the design and the benefits that we need. So I'd provide that as additional feedback relative to that. But yay, housing, keep going on that front.
Thank you, Commissioner Salve. We have Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
Thank you. While we're on the subject, because I had the same thoughts about parking. Do you have, so if you do maintain that you need this much parking, how is the deck? I guess I'm curious, like, are you planning to design this deck to maybe be future proofed? So like, if you find that you don't need this much parking in the future, it could be easily converted into something else. Have you not thought that far down the road? Just curious, sort of like if there is a potential reuse for this, in 20 years, 15 years.
Sure. On a reuse situation, yes, parking ramps can be designed with that intent. At this time, we haven't really put those things into place for a conversion in the future, and it does change the diagram and the layout pretty significantly, where we would need to study that for a future conversion. It is more difficult, I'll say that, at the forefront to make that make those arrangements so that it can be possible in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I just had the same, like the frontage on, is it 4th or 5th? Like I had the same concerns as Commissioner Sauvé. And then I'm a little, do you own everything on the entire block?
No. Yeah, the reality is, we can't force people to sell their property.
Right.
So we're working on the properties where people have agreed to sell their property, and that's why it's not the whole block.
Okay. Then my concern about that part, I mean, that's just a huge, like, unappealing, massive thing right next to these smaller single family homes. That kind of concerns me if those homes were to stay. And yeah, I think I too would just like to hear a little bit more about public benefits that are sort of beyond what we typically see from projects these days, specifically, I think because of this parking deck. I will let others speak.
Thank you. Commissioner Weatherby.
Yeah, so I will pile on the parking here. This was my first thought too, is why is there so much parking? And I have a pretty good sense that you can live in this neighborhood without this much parking, because I live very near this neighborhood, and there was no discussion of anything other than parking. You talked about the parking and how the parking does this and the parking that, and I really was hoping for a lot more than sort of we're doing sustainability, but I didn't hear the word bike. I just heard parking. So I assume that you can't do parking underground because of the water table. Correct. Is that correct? Yeah. Correct. So will there be anything underground, or is it's out of the flood plain, or it's out of the floodway, but still corner of that is in the floodplain, or yes or no?
Yeah, the southwestern corner is encroached slightly by the same floodplain that gobbled up most of Fingers Lumber Company, now the university's property, The floodway, it does not come onto our property,
Yeah.
but you may be familiar with a couple of my other buildings, the Gallery and the Kingsley condominiums. Both of those properties also have floodplain on their site. The FEMA requirements are that you can't reduce the amount of flood volume that's stored on your site, so we're not going to do that. So the water will be able to flow under the building without interfering with the building's operation. Nobody gets their feet wet, but we aren't going to be moving the volume elsewhere. It's all going to stay on our site.
Okay, right. And I know you've worked on other projects in that same flood area, so hopefully you will not be as surprised as the university seemed to be with Elbel.
And you can see on this slide that Mr. Axman has up, we are incorporating a lot of bike parking. Some of it is underneath the vehicular parking above. Some of it is within the building proper. So we have quite a lot of bike parking as well. We were limited to 10 minutes. We could only talk about so much, and we wanted the feedback that you're giving us. So,
Yeah.
but yes, we know there's going to be lots of bike parking.
Okay. And just a couple, I really like the walk-up units on all sides. I like the activation of the whole block. You are perhaps replacing, you know, an entire block, but it's still housing, and there is still, I think there's single family housing on both sides, correct? There's not, the university's property begins a block away. So there are,
Well,
you know,
yeah, it's mattered around us. There's university property directly to our southwest. There's university property to the south. There's university property just up the street on Madison. But yes, on both 4th and 5th, there are still some single family structures. Some are used that way and some are student rentals.
I mean, students are people.
What I mean student rentals is they're not a single family dwelling. They're two family dwellings or 3 family
Right.
dwellings that have been carved up.
But they're a single family dwelling structure, perhaps is
They certainly look it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then just one, I do kind of, I know that this is an unusual thing, but I kind of like the taller bit at the bottom because I do think that is less overwhelming for, I mean, that view is just going to look out on Elbel Field, and as long as they like bands, they'll be good. I think that's an interesting use of kind of turning that around, even though the higher bit is sort of away from the D2 sort of more traditionally taller areas. But I think that's an interesting use of this. So I'll turn it over to other people.
Thank you. Commissioner Mills.
Hi. So if you can go back, I think it's just a couple of slides that shows the context of the zoning. So I think this will be helpful for reference. In the packet, can you better explain why you feel like this cannot be achieved under other zoning designations, specifically speaking about D1 or D2?
So one of the major reasons is that the ordinance currently prohibits any premiums for the site because the floodplain encroaches under the site. So that takes away the FAR and makes it a much less efficient use of land than we'd like to see. You know, in our quest for housing, we want to be as efficient as we can with the land that we do have. And right now, you know, we would just not be allowed the FAR because in that southwestern corner, which is zoned M1, we have floodplain encroaching onto the site, even though the depth of the water is only going to be 2 feet at the corner, maybe a foot. It's not a great impact. The code doesn't recognize that. It says if it's touched by the floodplain, you don't get any premiums.
Have you considered what the impact is of leaving the part that is currently M1 or currently in the floodplain out? And what then, why is that not feasible? Or, yeah.
Well, I know that when ESG was looking at it, it has a significant impact You know, it slices through a great portion of the site at that corner, even though it's inches deep, you know, at its perimeter.
Yeah, we did address the site in a variety of ways with and without certain pieces. But without that piece and without other pieces, the project was a lot more difficult without that southwest corner, and that's actually one of our better corners to kind of hold with the context across the street in both directions.
So, okay. If you, thank you for that. I'm on the floodplain part of this. We've had lots of conversations, scattered conversations, both within kind of what we're doing in downtown premiums, but also recent in the last couple of year conversations about development in floodplains. And I'm not comfortable personally wiping that out for a particular site. I feel like I would need a whole lot more justification and thinking through what the impacts of that would be personally, but that may be just a personal issue. If you go back to the zoning map, pegging this to D1, it seems, as was mentioned, we're in the middle of comprehensive planning. This is the logical place for downtown to expand to, I would imagine. But to benchmark this to D1, given that actually the nearest is D2, I mean, I is another thing that is curious to me, in terms of, you know, yes, D2 is a lower density, but I want to think about this not as a block by block conversation, but within the context of planning. Where is downtown, and is this the density? Is this the kind of FAR that's appropriate here? If it's more or less benchmarked to D1, then I think that that ought to be in the context of a bigger planning discussion about where are the D1 boundaries, because currently, like, it's not even D2, let alone D1. And I think that that ought to happen in the conversation of where is our downtown. So I'm not sure that there's not another zoning designation that this fits into. And to create a D1 like PUD island, particularly because D1 doesn't fit because of the floodplain thing, that's just a real hard sell for me. I like the idea of housing. I would, again, think about where within that, like, if there's another way to parse that site that would accomplish that. In terms of the benefits, again, I'm not sure that I think this passes that second criteria of that it can't be accomplished with another zoning designation personally. But if others could convince me otherwise, like once we get to the point of making the discussion, I'm really going to be looking at what are the benefits that are offered here that are above and beyond what would be in another zoning designation. And so I concur with all of the discussion before about how much parking there is, particularly if you're trying to make the case that this is well served to be a sustainable building. Then my final just comment, and I know we're not talking about site plan, but dog parks can be controversial, and to put that next to the neighbors, I would want lots of conversation around that. I know that it can be an amenity to your residents. If the neighbors don't see it as a benefit, that particular amenity that is shown on the site plan, I would want to make sure that that's been vetted. That's all I got.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Commissioner Abrams.
Hi, thank you. So I agree with the comments that have come before, concerns about parking and whatnot. I'll start by also just saying, you know, I also agree that I support housing. I want housing. I want housing on this site. I'm pro density. I'm pro height, all of those things. But I similarly am interested in understanding this project relative to D2, not even because I think it should be zone D2, but I just think I can't really make that I can't really evaluate it without seeing it. So it's interesting to me that in the packet we received, it gets compared to D1. What else is in there? Sorry, now I'm blanking on it. And R4C, but not D2. So I think next time it comes, next time it comes up, I think that that D2 needs to be a column in there so that we can see that. And then I also, and I guess what Commissioner Mills is putting on the table and the questions around parking are putting on the table is, if you didn't build in that corner and you had access to premiums and you built less parking, could you get to the same FAR with, or could you get to this, to an appropriate or an acceptable FAR within the D2 zoning? I think the answer is probably not, but I want to see what that would produce and see that difference. And then, just obviously the deliberation here is that in exchange for the PUD, what are the community benefits? And so could you go to the slide where you list the community benefits, please? I think I often wonder this when I see these presented to me, which is that I want to go with like a Sharpie and cross out the ones which are actually part of any project, right? So like stormwater management is not a community. I mean, that's something that we require of every project. If there's something in particular about this project that is above and beyond what would be required, then by all means, I would like to know that. But I didn't hear that. I didn't think that I heard that. And similarly, I wonder what we do with some of the sustainability features, which are, or I guess maybe this is a question for the petitioner, like, are these things which you imagine are going in the supplemental regulations and you're committing to now, or are they things which are your intention, but as we often understand, you can't really make a promise about them at this stage, so early in the project. So like, is geothermal something that you are prepared to commit to, or building integrated solar power?
Well, we know we're going to have solar panels. We still have to work out which portion of the roof surface is for solar panels and which portion is for other uses, mechanical equipment and the like. So as we drill down in more granular detail, we'll be able to figure out what the generation capacity is of the roof on this project. But unlike a typical high rise, we have a lot more roof area. So I'm sure it'll exceed what we were able to come up with at 721 Forest. Our geothermal consultant is in the process of gearing up to do test borings. So we'll know what the thermal exchange rate is per foot in this particular part of town with the soils that are there. So again, until we have that data, it's hard to quantify what percentage of the heating and cooling load can be done that way. But as we move through the process, all those details are going to become more crystal clear, and they would be then incorporated into the development agreement and the supplemental regs, just as we did at 721 Forest.
So the hope or the intention is that by the time we get to that stage in this process, those decisions you will be able to make those decisions.
Correct. And I also just wanted to point out, the city kind of has a D.1.5, a project that's kind of splitting between D2 and D1, and that's the standard. And it's my recollection that the split height, etc., on that site was a function of a consent agreement. So what we're really accomplishing here is something of a D1.5, but through the PUD rather than a consent agreement. So the city does have kind of a precedent in terms of a mid-rise on one part and a high-rise on the other, et cetera, in that one project and hopefully in this one.
I mean, I think, I guess going forward, if there are precedents like that Alexis, it might be helpful to be reminded of those. I think I was around, wasn't I around when I don't know. Anyway, my memory's foggy, but so just to wrap up and be clear, I think I would like to see more like comparison and analysis relative to the flood premiums, the possibility for premiums, the possibility for less parking, D1 zoning, really as a way to essentially like shore up the support of this project as it is, as you're presenting it, not because I necessarily am saying that because I think that one of those alternatives necessarily will be better, but I need that information in order to evaluate. And then in the community benefits, I really would love to just like scrub the list of anything that's a requirement of any project, and give more space to the things that you really are bringing that are legitimately a community benefit, that are unique to this project, that we only get in a way if it's a PUD.
Understood.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Abrams. Any other thoughts, comments, discussion points? Councilmember Dish.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing this project. So I wondered, I think this is something that you can't answer now because you were just talking about anticipated capacity for the solar panels, but I'd love to hear how close you can get to net zero with the building. I'm excited about the geothermal, which is, one thing that is really helpful. Thank you for putting in compost waste bin designations. That's great. We actually are hearing a lot of demand from students that they want to do compost. So it's terrific if you make room, and I think it can be provided, but that has to be subscribed to. So that would be kind of neat if that were offered. So I too am a little curious about if the parking could be reduced, but I also wanted to pick up on your point about how now that there are no mandatory parking minimums, any parking that is provided on a building gets counted against FAR. And I do not know if there's a practical way to determine how much, if any, of your parking structure should be discounted from the calculation of your FAR. I don't know, because it seems like anything we would do would be random. Should we say a quarter of it? Because, well, what would that mean? So we think that that compared to your other building, this one is offering 25% too much parking, and which isn't to say that it's 25% parked. I'm just saying that relative to the other building, this is more. We could, but unless we change the zoning, that would remain the case, that parking does count against your FAR. So I don't know if that's a calculation that we could make in some abstract way to think differently about the FAR that's being used here, or if we're just faced with making a decision whether we want to permit an FAR that staff feels is out of context. I appreciate the way you have constructed the view that's actually under this list of the community benefits, because you are showing us a building that is anticipating where we are going. You are showing it in relation to phase 2 of the residential quad. You're showing it in relation to 350 South Fifth. You've made a strong argument for why you're putting the greater mass of the building farther away from D2. And I think that makes sense because of the way it's allowing you to use the site and minimize the feeling of mass for pedestrians who are along there, who are walking along there. So I'm sympathetic with the choices that you've made. in the structure of the building, and I'm sympathetic with the idea of thinking about this as a building that is, in the way you put it, Mr. Moore, adjacent to this nexus of student life. So I appreciate all of those things. And at the same time, I wonder why students need so many cars.
As to a comparison, Commissioner Dish, we, rather than being random or arbitrary, what we could do is compare it to what the requirements were before the recent change, because that's what all the other projects that have been built were built under. So that would be an easy thing, because we still have that language. So we could do that comparison if you'd like to see that.
Yeah, you could, and then you could tell me what the FAR would come out to if you did that calculation. Yeah.
Commissioners, Councilmember Dish, did you have any other thoughts? Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Commissioner Salve. And
So maybe I just want to synthesize really quickly some of the things that I'm hearing and benefits, because I think that's what hopefully you can walk away with understanding some benefits. Understanding D1 and D2 versus what's proposed in the table, it looks like the PUD matches similar to D1. And I think the question is, how much are you off from D2? How I measure it is what would happen if we waited for the comprehensive plan and then made recommendations for upzoning it, and then the petitioner still had to apply for upzoning? The cost benefit is time in a housing crisis. So right there, like, I feel more comfortable measuring that kind of increased density of, like, we can do this now with PUD, or we can wait for other tools and recommendations later. And in the end, we're getting housing for this margin. But measuring that margin, I would like to see, if this were, creeping in on D2, what we're measuring is the ask between D2, at least this is how I would measure it. Assume that there's a recommendation to be D2. The ask is the difference between D2 and D1. And that's the kind of payment margin for payment in lieu and other benefits. That would be my margin of benefits that I would want to measure against, not the current zoning to D1, but that's just me. So just to give maybe a round robin final feedback loop of how everybody else feels within that margin. Is that helpful to start to give some specificity to where we might be measuring from to look for those benefits?
Yes, that is helpful. Thank you so much for offering that. Yep.
Commissioner, oh, I'm sorry, were you finished, Commissioner Salve? Okay, great. And by the way, guys, we're at 8 o'clock right now, about 5 more minutes. Commissioner White.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted, I am stuck on parking. Been listening attentively and still stuck here on parking. The Beekman project that's on Broadway, they built, I think, a parking deck, and they found out that the usage was 0.6 per unit. So it might be worth your while to take a look at that and sort of look at that in comparison of what you're doing. If you took that approach based on your units, that would reduce your parking calculation right now from 450 to 270. And then I don't know what our code says about putting the parking inside the floodway. So that might be a way to sort of move the site around in order to accommodate some of the things that we've shared at the table so far, as well as reducing the parking. Because I am really, really surprised that there are 450 units of parking or parking spaces in this development. So I just want to say that out loud again. And then the last thing, we just did a housing party event this morning in the city, and we had city staff there, and we were talking a little bit about affordability in the city. And I think, to your benefit, you are choosing a PUD, which means you're being doubly taxed. You're going to get your property tax, which goes into our housing millage. And I think you should note that. And you should do some rough calculations for how many units of housing your development might produce through the housing millage. But because you're doing a PUD, you're also going to have to make a payment in lieu. And I think it would be worthwhile for you to do an estimate. You don't have to get all the way there because it's going to depend on how assessments and all those things work out, but an estimate of this payment in lieu and compared to what our tax receipts were for the current or the previous fiscal year. So when I did the math on 721 South Forest, you were contributing somewhere, I don't know, north of 6 million. And that was the entire receipts for the housing millage for 1 year, its first year in operation. And I don't think people understand the scale of what you are contributing. And if you want to make a case for community benefit, I think you take that scale and then you convert that into units, because at that scale, our housing commission can multiply that 2, 3, 4, 5 times and actually build the kind of housing that we need for affordability, which are family housing. They don't need student or single units. They need 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units with 2 and 3 baths. So make that argument in your community benefit so that we really get an understanding of what your unique development is bringing to our community, which I think is a missed opportunity because you're just saying increased tax revenue.
Thank you, Commissioner Wunsch. Commissioner Mills, did you have something you wanted to add on? I think I saw a hand up.
I did, and just quickly, in terms of Commissioner Sauvé's suggestion of a round robin, I like kind of making that comparison and thinking about D2. I want to marry it with what Commissioner Abram said and being really articulate about, especially when you're making that comparison, is it to D2 with premiums? And again, what are those benefits? What is different than what would have been required in those? And I know that because of the floodplain benefit, the premiums aren't allowed there, but I'm curious about that because I think that's a point that I will look at. And so.
Gotcha. Thank you. I'm going to try to wrap this up. I just have 2 comments. I certainly do agree with a lot of the things that were said. I wanted to, if you guys could go to page 24 and 23 of the packages you guys had submitted. I think it's different from the one that was actually PDF'd. Yeah, it's definitely not those. It's an axonometric kind of a cross section. I had a question about the interior courtyard. That one, 14. I mean, is it an interior courtyard that's just like sunless? I mean, it's 10 stories. Can you just give me a quick idea of what that is? Like it's completely kind of like surrounded. So my thought was like, you could do a Texas donut where you're surrounding a parking structure, but to have a courtyard that's surrounded by 10 stories was an interesting design choice. So just wanted to ask.
Sure, commissioners and chair, great question. Yeah, I mean the proportions of that courtyard are tall and slender. So it's a it functions as a light well for sure. And then it's more, I would say it's between a courtyard and a light well. But typically, our courtyards have a greater proportion of depth and width. You did see it on its rather short side there in the cross section. So here you see more of the roof plan view, and it is greater on an east to west dimension than it is on that north south dimension. So gotcha. Keep that in mind that it isn't a square interior courtyard. It is actually a longer rectangular space.
Gotcha. Sounds good. And I know we're running a little over. Thank you for that explanation. The other one that I just wanted to point out, if you could go to the cross section of the street section, the outboard balconies. I know we've talked a lot about actually, not that one. The one with the cars. 2 quick thoughts here. A lot of people talked about kind of like the parking lot and the auto-centric features creating kind of a large gap in the overall block. I wanted to just point out that 5th, which is intended to be your primary kind of front entrance, in essence is a one-way street. You did have somewhere in there, it could be 2-way at some point in the future. However, just given the actual dimensions, and then think about the utility, like the trash pickups for how the users of 5th Street currently across the street use it as well. So generally, they're putting their trash out kind of like where that red car is. And I normally associate this with this kind of like downward topography. There's a lot of traffic that kind of goes down that way. So thinking about interaction of pedestrians with, creating kind of a safer environment there, I think that's going to be pretty helpful. So, you talked about porosity, pathways. The more porosity there is for pedestrians, I think it'll be more helpful. I know that there is that one service lane, and that's probably a design element that you guys chose about that parking lot. It's like I need a service lane at some point. But to have something almost dedicated for pedestrians, I think will be something that's also welcomed in the design. So overall, thinking about, does a Texas donut work to try and have less parking deck be the frontage on the 4th? And then also thinking about the interactions on the 5th Avenue, and how that's currently utilized, where you see the interactions looking like. And that's exactly the one I'm talking about. It doesn't feel quite as wide, right? Like if, there's street parking, you'll need city council action to vacate, street parking. But thinking about how to make that a safer environment. So not necessarily changing or widening it, but so that was, but overall, utilizing topography to have the kind of massing that you guys do, I think it's an appropriate project. I thought it was, for all the constraints you have, well done, but I do voice the concerns about the appropriateness of a D1 comparison relative to D2 or a D1.5, I think. So that was just, thinking about interactions, pedestrian and auto-centric. Less, it's a big block. It's like kind of like a feeling like a super block at this point. Is there a way to create breakup of pedestrian porosity? And then thinking about a lot of people are either going to take Packard or Madison on a west to eastward pathway. Think about how that the pathway kind of feels. Should there be rapid, flashing beacons to protect pedestrians, especially since 5th Avenue down to Madison, that is kind of like where it kind of bottoms out, right? So trying to create safer conditions there, all of that will kind of, happen during the traffic review process. But overall, can you wrap the parking so it's not such a prominent feature of 4th Avenue? And then thinking about, shadow casting on 4th Ave or, 4th Avenue R4C that you have there. So is D1's conflict with R4C appropriate for what we're getting as a public benefit? I think that's really kind of what I have as far as 2 cents. Does anybody have, just 1 minute? Does anybody have any kind of closing thoughts that they wanted to add on to? If not, thank you so much for your time and your efforts on this, because we do have another big PUD coming up. I think we will move to the next agenda item. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Commissioner Salve.
So at this time, as we transition to the second agenda item, I'd be asked to be moved to the participant room as well, so I can recuse myself for involvement in the project. But thank you.
Okay.
We can certainly do that.
All right. So we are now going to a PUD pre-petition conference for 125 South Main PUD zoning district and site plan. Presentation discussion about the concept plans for a planned unit development of 14,532 square feet, 0.33 acres at the corner of South Main, East Washington, currently known as the Chase Building. And with us, I see Steve, Mr. Kalabat. And we will wait for the rest of the team to be promoted.
Yes. Good evening. I'm making sure I have everybody. We had a couple of people adding. I want to make sure we have everybody from their team. Let's see. Yes, looks like we've got most Tristan and team. Do we have most of your group promoted? Isaiah, I see you there. Stephen.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so with that, I'll just give a quick intro. I think everybody knows I'm Matthew Kowalski, one of the city planners here. And was before you tonight, 125 South Main. The 5-story building basically located on the corner of Main and Washington there. It's an existing bank building now that you can see was reskinned a while ago. So they are seeking a PUD zoning for that. I won't go back and rehash all of the findings within my memo, but they do have a presentation for you tonight. And I believe, well, Isaiah, one of you will be able to share the screen. I think maybe Isaiah. Yes. Okay. Well, with that, I'll let the petitioner take it away, please.
All right, you guys can see the screen, okay?
Yes. Thank you.
All right. I think we can give, so Steve Calvet, who's represents the ownership group, I think can do an introduction. My name is Isaiah King from Shop Architects, and I'm here with Tristan Nodal and Ryan Darling from my team. So Steve, if you want to give an intro.
Sure. Thank you, Isaiah. I'll keep this very brief. First of all, we're very excited to be able to present this ambitious project that we think will meet many of the goals of the municipality and act as a catalyst for the downtown and improve a dormant, empty site, in the heart of Main Street. Just, as you all know, just very quick background. It's, empty office, inactive, impersonal, monolithic, black windows. Just, it's been sitting vacant for a number of years. Lots of office that wasn't even being used before COVID. We're here because we believe this project will be a catalyst to meeting the demands of the Ann Arbor market. We believe we will revitalize the north end of Main. We will create more new and exciting multifamily and hotel options for Main Street. Activate retail on north of the Washington area, revitalize the area with improved streetscape, alleyways, and a public plaza for everybody to enjoy. Overall, just creating a new standard of quality and sustainability on Main Street, which doesn't really exist today. So we're pursuing this PUD because this allows the project to become more financially viable. We are looking towards a collaboration, public-private collaboration in our path to feasibility and to achieve everyone's goals here. So I'd like to pass it on to Shop. They can tell you a little bit more about the project. And if you have any questions for me or anybody else, we're here.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, so to quickly walk through it, the project site, you all are aware of where that is, in the middle of the downtown D1 density, where obviously density and growth is desirable in terms of height. It is, sort of the urban core of Ann Arbor. The location of the site, 125 South Main, is at the intersection of Washington and South Main Streets, which are two of the most important pedestrian corridors.
If you're trying to run the, I don't know that it's going through.
Oh, you're not seeing. Okay. Sorry. Let me switch out of this then. Are you able to see? What are you seeing?
There we go.
Now we can see it. Yeah.
Seeing the
You
site.
can see.
Yep.
You see the site. Great. Okay. Fantastic. Okay. Apologize for that. Just using some speaker notes. Right. So the intersection of Washington and South Main. Here's the overlay. So we're all aware of where that is. The site is adjacent to the Ann Arbor Historic District core. And as a result of that, is really an important site, obviously for the city to establish a high quality project in this location, adjacent to, most of the important historic buildings on the Main Street corridor. Main Street today is really the heart of pedestrian Ann Arbor, as you all know, and we're looking to extend that quality further along to the north. Washington Street as well is an important commercial street. Sort of literati and the small shops on the east side and restaurants and dining on the other side can really be linked by our development and active ground floor across the site, connecting both sides across Main. Here's the existing site survey today showing the adjacent alleyway. And here's some photos of the existing alleyway as exists today, primarily used for trash and service, also for utility access to various properties. Notably, it is actually cut off to the north and already demapped, and there's a grade change down to the PNC bank lot to the north. So we're actually looking to utilize this alleyway and have been in discussions with the city planning staff, Matt Kowalski, also the DDA on potential vacation of the remaining part of this alley, and are considering the lot area as part of this application, and would continue to potentially propose vacation in parallel to the filing of the PUD. And we'll go through the reasons why we're interested in doing that. Again, the alleyway site combined areas 14,532 square feet with our site. To quickly go through the program and massing. So our project offers a mixed-use development with 70 to 75 residential units. Also brings 200 Key Hotel to downtown, bringing much needed foot traffic to help replace a lot of the lost visitors and workers that have left after COVID. The amount of people coming downtown to visit has been reduced. So we think this is a key amenity and for the project downtown. It brings approximately 12,000 square feet of active ground floor retail on both frontages in Main and Washington, an improved pedestrian public realm and alleyway, and pedestrian outdoor space, as well as below grade valet parking for the residential and hotel. So no surface parking proposed for this site. To dig a little bit into the zoning comparison chart of by right versus the PUD proposed. Again, the lot area combined with the alleyway, assuming a vacation, the base FAR of 400% with an existing height cap of 180. We looked at the premiums for affordable premium, which brings additional density and unlocks additional height into the site by right. But with the 30% existing today and 15% on site is really an onerous option for the development. It makes it very difficult to achieve. To unlock additional density, we also looked at the lead premium as well as the public space premium. Altogether, those potential densities on the site, we still need to unlock additional density to make the program that we're imagining kind of pencil out. So looking at the PUD proposed, we are still looking at the same sorts of components, affordable component, which would be in the form of a payment in lieu for affordable housing, a sustainable component as well. And we'll go through some of those that we have planned for the project, as well as the pedestrian plaza. So together with those, we're looking at requesting basically a 230% FAR or 0.23 FAR and a 33 foot increase to the height from the by right. This is an image of the proposed development. So in red, the retail spaces, first two floors of the podium are active ground floor retail with a setback along Main Street, the 5 foot setback required. I believe this is actually slightly more than that. There's a floor of amenity on top of that podium, 13 floors of hotel, and additional floors of residential. Up to a rooftop height on top of the amenity of 268 feet. You can see here as well, we're looking at a proposed alleyway drop-off, which we'll go into in the ground floor planning next door, adjacent to the Washington garage. In sections, so showing how that stack works in the below grade parking. And some of the sustainability strategies that we're bringing to the table. Enhanced roof terrace with native plantings on both the rooftop as well as the podium roof. An enhanced tree canopy at grade, filling in some of the vaults that exist underneath the existing structure to create better tree pits and a better tree canopy at grade. LED lighting fixtures and low flow fixtures, energy efficient systems, stormwater retention and storage, electrified building systems, low VOC, bicycle parking, and composting offered on site, as well as solar PVs to 40 to 45% of the roof on top. In terms of benefits to the city, again, we mentioned bringing people back to the downtown with the additional 200 keys, brought in from the sort of suburban ring of hotels around the I-94 corridor back to downtown, a lot more foot traffic will be brought downtown with fewer auto trips to support local restaurants and businesses. The residential units and contribution to affordable housing, the public realm, which we, today is completely dead, and bringing an active streetscape back in, activating the alleyway with a new plaza, as well as an opportunity for public art, tax revenue, sustainability goals, which you just outlined, and then also the vaults under both Main and Washington being offered back to be infilled for improvements. This is a development image in context. So here's 125 South Main, context to existing structures in the city, as well as recently approved proposals such as the Y lot, a different vantage point, and then looking west. So obviously there is a lot more density here, but within the context of what's already been built and what's recently been approved in Ann Arbor, we think it is in the contextual, sort of height range of existing structures. Quickly to go through public realm and programming. So this is a view of the development from the roof with the various terraces outlined, as well as the alleyway. Notably, we're not proposing to build over the alleyway. That would be left open with a use easement, but really looking to activate it. And here are some photos of how other cities have engaged their alleyways and started to bring active uses into those spaces. So in terms of public art and actual pedestrian activity, starting to come into these types of spaces throughout the city. Ground floor plan to unpack our thinking. So one of the other benefits of using the existing alleyway is the existing curb cut. We're proposing to utilize that curb cut and widen it slightly for access for vehicles and loading to the building. Other properties adjacent to us would also, have the use easement for access through the alleyway, but this reduces the number of curb cuts on the site on a block which is already very spliced up with curb cuts to the east and from the parking garage. This improves safety and pedestrian environment. The pedestrian plaza would front that, serving as an entry forecourt for both the hotel as well as the residential. And then the active ground floor retail hotel restaurant would front Main Street and Washington Street in its full frontage. This would be connected to a second floor retail. So there was actually an opportunity for a double height activation and something truly special in the corner of Main. And then below grade, this is the parking. We're planning for automated and stacker parking in the basement for efficiency. It would be run as a valet and primarily would serve residential functions and hotel functions. Example of those systems in practice and in use with automated stacker parking. The third floor is thought of as an amenity on top of the podium terrace. So this would be a planted terrace, which would be visible from the street and part of the pedestrian sort of experience and environment. Above, typical hotel floor plate with roughly 15 keys per floor. Typical residential with about 10 units per floor, and then a shared amenity space. I'm going to turn it over at this point for comments and feedback. Really, want to thank the commission for taking the time to entertain our proposal and provide your feedback. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much. Mr. Kowalski, I know you gave a little bit of a staff kind of prelude at the beginning. Did you have any other further comments with respect to this, or should we dive into discussion?
No, I don't really have any, I guess, fine. I'll just say one other brief thing is that we did, I believe the petitioner also mentioned, we have at a very initial meeting regarding that alley that's located between the parking structure and their subject property. As they indicated, the meeting was really about the possible vacation of that alley, with comments from the DDA and staff engineering. So the feeling was completely, they were not given a direction of yes or no exactly. However, it also was not, it's by no means the door was closed on that. It's one of those issues that requires further study and analysis. But also it was also indicated that most of what they would want to do, whether the alley was vacated or not, would be supported by staff and the DDA as well, as far as activating that alley or change, doing. Again, most of what they show on their plan to use that for could probably be done whether or not the alley would be activated or not. But again, to be clear, we haven't done a lot of analysis on this. So it's, as you know, this is a pre-PUD concept. But it does look like there's a road to a solution, at least for that alley use. So that was really all that I would be able to add at this time. But thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kowalski. And for clarification purposes, I do see that Brad Moore is still on as a panelist. Is he a part of the?
I don't think so.
No.
Okay, gotcha. Perhaps we
Thank you.
could.
I'll
Yeah.
address that.
Thank you. All right, we'll go into discussion. Would any commissioner like to kick us off? Commissioner Mills.
I think a lot of what I have to say echoes kind of some of the comments from the previous one, particularly about being really clear in the benefits about what is above and beyond what is achievable through D1 premiums. So especially with respect to sustainability, what I heard was the affordability, because of the way the premiums are written now, they're hard. And so this allows you to still offer that, but in a different mechanism. I get that. You also know we're in the conversation of downtown premium discussion. So also knowing where that is and where that conversation either is currently or when you come before us or where it lands is going to be really important to understand how this is different and what benefits you are achieving above and beyond. So on the sustainability side, for example, what would you know, if you're suggesting that it's a 247 or something to that effect above kind of what is achievable through premiums, I don't, in my mind, then the benefits that you're showing that are achievable through getting you to lead silver, like lead silver doesn't count because you need to go above and beyond that if you want to claim that there's some additional sustainability benefits. So that's just one of my thinkings. I'll also just say I saw this in both presentations. Every development that comes has the benefit of additional tax revenues. So I, in my mind, don't count that as an additional public benefit specific to, in my mind, maybe others feel differently, warranting PUD. Personally, I mean, I think we need more housing, definitely. And the fact that this is an underutilized corner is indisputable. That it's 14 floors of a hotel and 7 floors of residential, that's a hard sell to me. The residential is what we're in need of. I don't know that hotel is necessarily something that is a strict, you know, a need to need to go above and beyond. So I'm curious about how that fits in and why so much hotel.
Yeah, I think we thought, given the central location here, you know, in the heart of downtown, that a hotel is potentially the highest and best use here. You know, also in order to achieve even, you know, the residential units we're providing, I think the hotel allows us to do that feasibly from a financial standpoint. Another consideration too is that, you know, we do think that residential, particularly of the variety we're proposing, which would be, you know, not student oriented, does require parking from marketability standpoint, which, you know, we are trying not to go above grade or further with the parking that we have. So there's some limitations there as well. So that was a lot of the thinking behind what we're proposing here.
Yeah, and if I may, with respect to the hotel rooms, we did 2 studies, and Ann Arbor is underserved by at least 1,200 rooms. So we knew that was going to be something that was that there's definitely some demand and lower supply, and the fact that we could, you know, bring those keys into Main Street and add a lot of vitality and business to the downtown stores and restaurants there. I thought, you know, we thought would be a great addition to, you know, what we think is the heart of Main Street.
I think personally I could, given the need for long-term residential, or, you know, I welcome others' thoughts about that. I appreciate kind of why, but I'm not sure that in my mind that then elevates its need. into this kind of additional classification. And I'm glad you brought up parking, because this is right next to a parking garage. And it's fancy, very fancy parking, as discussed, but I'm curious about that. I'm glad that it's not at grade, certainly surface. Even so, again, it is in the heart of downtown. We don't necessarily need more traffic. We need more foot traffic, and it is next to a parking garage. I think overall, from my mind, and like this is the first building like this I've seen, I would imagine to exceed the FAR so much, I would expect this to be like the most sustainable, like the model building, like it, or like maxing out something, or being exceptional design. This would be iconic. Especially, and would dwarf, I don't know the name of the building next to it. I know that in context, it doesn't seem, there are other tall buildings in other parts. It is just the tall building that is currently on Main Street, which is a very, I don't know, iconic design with different lights at different times of the year. This would make it seem extremely small. And so it's going to be noticeable. I think that would be something that maybe would push it up. But again, just the balance of uses in my mind, and that I'm not seeing exceptional sustainability, is not selling it yet for me, but I'm welcome to hearing other folks, and obviously look to see how this project evolves.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills.
Just to address, sorry, the parking next door, we are certainly aware, and we did speak with DDA about being able to potentially reserve spaces or anything like that. As far as we know at this time, there is no mechanism for any long-term availability of parking that we can derive from that lot, which, if we're not able to offer with certainty that parking, the financeability of the project is significantly hindered.
Thank you. Councilmember Dish.
Thank you. I was looking through the pictures. So that's really helpful to hear that you so far don't have the ability to use the parking lot that exists there in a reliable way. So it's interesting that you included a picture of the old Lena restaurant facade in your packet, or at least in the one that you sent us, because that just makes me sad having to look at the ugly Pretzel Bell facade, which I really don't think is as nice. Maybe the venue is better, but it isn't as pretty. So I think that I really want to echo one thing that Commissioner Mills just said, which is this better be a gorgeous building. You clearly have a sense for gorgeous buildings. You've shown us beautiful shots of a couple of the facades on Main, and I think that for this to do all of the optimistic things that you say that it might, it needs to be something that people's eyes are drawn to and their feet are drawn to. It needs to, and I love that you have the rooftop terrace. I can just imagine looking at Ann Arbor from that height. I think it would be fantastic, but it's got to be a beautiful building. And we hear so much from residents that they are just so tired of the buildings that they feel are not thoughtfully designed from really the architectural, not just the structure of the building, but the facade and everything. So this would need to be a statement building, I think. In terms of the ratio of hotel to residential, I am really excited about both because there aren't that many options for putting people up when they come into downtown. It is impossible to house any guests or visitors on a football weekend we do need more hotel beds. And we so need residential in downtown that is not student oriented. And it's not that I have any objections to students living everywhere, wherever they want. I love students. But the thing is that there is a difference between a building that's designed for students and a building that's not, a rental housing that's not designed for students. And I believe that it is difficult to get it financed. And if you are finding a way to do that and bringing us some, I think that that is a housing type that we are really, really missing right now, especially in the downtown. So I do see that as a significant benefit of this project. And of course, I'm completely happy for other more knowledgeable people on the commission to say, well, you know, you're not thinking of this. But I did just want to speak up for that because I do think this is unique in relation to the things that we're seeing. So about the underground parking, what if you had an EV parked underground and it caught on fire? Does that ever happen? Am I nuts?
Do you want me to take this? Who wants to take this one, Tristan? I'll speak a little bit. I mean, I'm pretty familiar with EVs and EV require, we built a facility for GM for one of their showrooms that housed EVs, and the city of, it was at Sterling Heights, I'll just say that we actually installed a very interesting fire suppression system in the building because of that. And, we would explore doing the same here, but, electric cars don't spontaneously start on fire. So that is not really, something that we should be thinking about at this stage, because if that were the case, then I think we have a lot bigger problems, quite frankly. But we would explore, all the latest safety fire suppression systems for the EVs in this building. Okay.
I'm not sure I imagined spontaneous combustion, but I don't know if they spark when they charge. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you very much. I think I might want to come in later again after I've heard more, but thank you for bringing us this.
Thank you, Councilmember Dish. Commissioner Weatherby.
Right. I have a couple of comments, and I think this is something that we're seeing in these PUDs is, so something like LED lighting, that's not a reason for me to approve a PUD. I mean, if you were going to say, oh, you're going to do all incandescent lighting, I'd be like, yeah, no, you're not, because that's not a huge benefit. That's what you're going to do anyway. Stormwater, again, that's required. A rooftop terrace, it might happen, might not happen. We have approved one for the graduate. It hasn't happened yet. That's not enough of a benefit for me to say yes for a PUD. On the other hand, the hotel, I think, is a great idea. I think especially downtown, our housing is an ecosystem. And one of the reasons so many Airbnbs and houses are being offered up is because there isn't other housing. And we do, for at least 10 days a year, have really high needs for hotels. And we want those to be downtown. We've had to put up for events, we've had to put people up in hotels where they just stayed in the hotel the whole time and didn't go out, didn't go shopping, didn't go out to eat. All those things we want, and we want that in our downtown. So I actually am really excited about the hotel piece of this. Housing is important, but again, it's an ecosystem, and some of our housing is being lost to short-term rentals, and this can help some with that. So that's an exciting thing for me. I would like to know a little bit more about the alleyway. It sounded like, and you don't have to actually respond too much today, but just it sounded like a lot was happening in that alleyway. It was going to be activated. It was going to be pedestrian. It was going to be places for travel and drop-offs. And so I think there's maybe still in the thought process of the alleyway, but again, I don't know if it's so much of a benefit or if it's almost a necessity, because otherwise everything's going to happen on the street in this area. But it's just something to kind of think a little bit more about of really what is this alleyway going to be, because it seems like there's a lot kind of on it. The other thing that I would like to hear, and this may be more from city staff, is fire back kind of to Commissioner Dish's point. I don't care how a fire starts, the fire department has started to express some concern about firefighting in taller buildings. And I would like to know that we have some comprehensive and concrete plan for that, and that can kind of go along. I know they're looking at it. I know it's something, but that's just something that the fire department has started expressing, and that makes me concerned. I think something like, contributing a fire truck would be more to me than, say, LED lighting as far as benefits. But that's just where I am right now. Is I like this project. I think it's cool. I think it's in a great spot, but the benefits are still a little, I think the benefits pencil out to make it worth doing, and that may be the legit answer, but I'm not getting a lot of benefits that you're stating in the project. And again, some of it may just be that you're discounting some of the things like the affordable housing contribution, but I'd like to see more of that.
Thank you. Commissioner Weich.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing this project. It's really unique and somewhat exciting to be here. I think I'll echo Commissioner Mills, just saying, haven't seen a project of this type since I've been on the commission for these past 2 years. So I want to sort of target my comments, starting with your benefits to the city slide. If you want to bring that one back up for those who are watching at home, I have it on my screen here. I think your number one needs to get a little bit more expansive. So back in April of this year, Tuesday, April 11th, the DDA presented to Planning Commission the Downtown Pandemic Impact and Recovery report. And I would ask that you all take a look at that and respond to that report in your development. So number one, they have a goal of bringing 700 to 1,100 residential units to downtown. So if you're bringing 70, you're at 10% of their goal. That's a community benefit. And I think that should be highlighted. I think Commissioner Mills made the comment around the hotel space, and you answered with a citation of that marketing report. I think that should be present in your community benefit, that the city is short about 1,200 hotel rooms, not just for the 8 to 10 football games a year, but throughout the course of the year. The alleyway, I think that alleyway, as you've been at least talking about it in the presentation, is sort of missing in this benefit in terms of this sort of unique space. There are some very unique alleys in Ann Arbor. You can go to the one that's outside the Michigan Theater, and just talking about how those become gathering places and spaces of activation. And I think you have just not activated this on your benefits. And then I'm just going to make the same point that I made with the last developer. This is going to be a substantial contribution to our affordable housing fund. And that needs to get externalized. And I think just saying, as you have in point 4, substantial additional tax revenue to the city, I think you should break that down because there are lots of people who are really quite honestly shocked that this proposal is coming to us. There are lots of comments that I believe we're going to get between this pre-PUD and if you choose to bring this forward about bringing this kind of development into the city of Ann Arbor, and how it's going to change the sort of small town, small college town feel. People are describing it as a skyscraper. You heard our first caller who said, oh, this isn't even in the top 50 of buildings in the state of Michigan. It would maybe take out the one that's number 50. But for people's perspectives and their lived experience, it's going to be substantial for them. And I think you have a better story to tell us about what you'd like to do in this space. And I would love to see you do that. And I think as we relate to sustainability, I think we have to talk more actively about how concentrating this much density is sustainable, how you are contributing to sustainability by bringing this density into this space. And I don't think it has to just be whether it's in fixtures or utilities or in various certifications. I think we have a better story to tell about sustainability. And I think as you are asking us to approve this as a PUD, you have an opportunity to tell us a better narrative. So those are my comments. I'm excited to see this go forward.
Thanks, Commissioner. And those were all great points. We agree with you, I think, about everything. And, you know, we have read the reports you're referencing. And we do intend to certainly expand on all these points. I think in a 10-minute presentation, we were trying to keep it very, very brief and then open up for comments and hear your feedback like what you just gave. And we'll definitely take that to heart and expand upon all these items.
Thank you, Commissioner White. Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
Thank you. Thanks for coming tonight. I'm very excited about this project. I just have a few comments, some echoing, some maybe new. I think first and foremost, like, and this has been mentioned before, I think just given the prominent location, the design of this needs to be something that's really special and fit within the context of what people really love about Main Street. And I think it really is that historic character. I mean, we don't have, you know, a lot of it's the lower scale buildings. I like that you have that step back so it can, you know, feel from the street. It's not going to feel hopefully too towering. I love density. I love tall buildings. I don't think it's a skyscraper. I think it'll fit in nicely, but I think the design needs to look, it needs to be iconic. I liked the proposed floor plate for the residential, the mix of primarily studio and one bed. I added up that it would probably be about 70 units of housing, because I think you had about 10 per floor. That is a size of housing that I think is just missing in Ann Arbor, not missing, but very hard to find in Ann Arbor in general. So I think that offering is going to be very welcomed. The benefit of a filled in basement under the sidewalks, I just don't understand what that is. So if that is truly something that then like allows the city to do things that they can't do right now, I would just like that to be expanded on a little bit, maybe like mapped out, because I just like, there's basements that are under sidewalk. I just did not.
Our basement extends under the sidewalk, and one of the things we spoke with DDA about that, you know, their intent on is kind of beautification of the street, filling that in. And then that allows you to plant, you know, tree planters and put pits and allow for greenery on the street.
If that's going to save city money, like spell that out.
And larger trees too, and better streetscape. Like, so both of those streets have vaults currently under them that we'd be willing to abandon and fill. Yeah.
Crazy. I want to see pictures of that too. And then lastly, I love alleys. I wrote my master's thesis on revitalizing alleys in downtown Austin. I think they can be amazing. I do agree with Commissioner Weatherby. There is sort of this context. It's like you want it as a porte cochere, you want it as pedestrian, like you use the belt as an example. There aren't cars allowed through there. So I don't know how, there needs to be some sort of delineation, I guess. Like I would love for it to be all pedestrian, but I think, you know, just otherwise you might not have room for, you know, the needs that you have for drop-offs. So yeah, I really want you guys to do something cool with the alley. If cars need to remain, I just want to see how we can keep them out of conflict with pedestrians and allow pedestrians to still use it as an amenity. There's just not a lot of like, downtowns just don't have tons of like public space where people can just sort of go and gather and hang. So alleys are nice uses for that. But I'm very excited about this project. Thank you so much for bringing it to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hammerschmidt. Do we have any other commissioners that want to give some feedback? Commissioner Abrams.
I don't have a lot to add, so I won't take up time. I just wanted to chime in with my enthusiasm for the potential of the project, and really appreciated Commissioner Weitch's advice about how to make an argument for this kind of density in a convincing way. So just want to underscore that I look forward to seeing this come back to us at a future date. Thanks.
Councilmember Dish.
Yeah, I just had one final question about the brownfield funding that you're anticipating. How long of a period, you probably obviously you wouldn't have structured this agreement yet, but that does affect the some of the benefit, or it defers some of the benefits that we're talking about in terms of to the Affordable Housing Fund and tax revenues. So do you have any idea at all about what that arrangement is going to look like, and what percentage of your costs are going to be recoverable through brownfield funds?
So we haven't made any application yet. You know, I think typically the benefits are in the range of 20 to 30 years, and then, you know, it's a conversation about what percentage is covered by that. So, you know, there's more conversation to be had there. Steve, you can add.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you know, we're definitely going to be applying for some benefit there to us, some incentives. I don't know what that looks like yet. You know, we needed to get past this process first, I guess, in order to, you know, have a reasonable, you know, opportunity to make our case.
Got it. Thank you. And by brownfield, I am taking it that you guys are going to be looking for TIF assistance, tax increment financing, where you
That's the hope.
Effectively issuing a bond that is repaid by the increased property taxes. So Commissioner Weitch made the point about, hey, let's be very specific about what types of tax benefits we have. It'll be offset by that TIF as it pays off the bond over a 20, 30-year horizon. So there is an economic development component of it, which I think is helpful. Any other commissioners that wanted to chime in? If not, I can give my feedback. A lot of great things have been already said. I want to focus on that first floor, so we're on the perfect slide. So one of the largest, I guess, salient variables correlated with retail success is clustering. And there's a lot of great retail. Even just to the north, you see parcel 15 and ending in 14. You see, you know, 20 feet storefronts, probably 60 feet back. You're looking at 12, 15, 2,400 square footers. I get a little hesitant when I see the entire first floor be entirely just one restaurant, right? So and as much as I love seeing the seatings on the window, and I just think that would be so exciting, right? To me, I would love to see more granular retail that's not just hotel dedicated. I know it's much easier if you just have an anchor tenant. You don't have to worry about re-tenanting, you know, 4 or 5 different retailers. But one of the exciting things about downtown streetscapes to me is the kind of different stores that you get to see. So the local kind of regional flavors that you get. And so just having one restaurant and the entire thing be mostly for hotel lobby, because I don't ever really feel, you know, that welcome when I'm not a guest at the hotel, right? I know it's supposed to be kind of, you know, open to the public, but so my immediate thought, you know, when I'm looking at this layout would be, is it possible to carve out, you know, at least 20 feet of storefront to create a little more diversity on the corner? I know operationally it's a little, but I think that actually does more to that pedestrian vitality that you were talking about. Anything is better than a big wall right now, and so by all means, I'm certainly in support of kind of the glass you know, facades, along with materiality. You guys mentioned some terracotta cladding. I mean, look no further than a lot of the buildings on Main Street or Nichols Arcade. Creating that kind of materiality distinction. And the DDA is going to go, I think you guys will have to go through a design review board anyways. But creating kind of the, the pedestrian scape of the 12, 24 feet kind of like markers where you get a sense of scale, I think will also be helped by the kind of, I guess, more diversity of storefronts rather than just one storefront for a primary use of hotel restaurant. So that to me, would love to see some more retail. I know, and I'm looking at the dimensions there. It's going to be challenging. You can't really get kitchens in there. I get it. You have to have that vertical penetration in the center core. So I understand, but just think about it. See if there's something that can be done to create a little more excitation, more diversity of retail storefronts. I am going to ask you guys to think about, I saw electric appliances. On the initial applications, it said the building was going to be electrified. I saw electric appliances on this presentation. The main driver is going to be what kind of a main, HVAC design is going to be, is it a water chilled, cooler for the, is it a major air handler centralized, or is it going to be a heat pump system? And obviously, again, I'm not asking for MEP designs. I think I talked last week about how tough it is to pull MEP before you're actually into, permit sets and things of that nature. So not asking for that right now, but at a certain point, you do have, big kind of like bulk prices. It's like I have these big buckets and HVAC is going to be one of them. So just like to know which way you guys are leaning in terms of overall HVAC design. That's going to be a big component of this. Obviously, we like the applications of saying, hey, we are committed to doing electric appliances. I think that's certainly helpful. HVAC is just going to be a big driver. And then I'm going to go back to Commissioner Mills' question about unit mix. So 200 keys relative to 75 units. I mean, do you guys already have kind of a flag in mind, or like the type of like quality? I mean, is this luxury? I mean, I imagine it's the center core. Do you guys have like a flag in mind that already said I need 200 keys, or is this more of like? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, we do. We're not at liberty to say who, but we do, and you would definitely classify them, more in the luxury realm, not Ritz or Four Seasons realm, but a step or two lower.
Gotcha, understood. And again, so I mean, if there's a unit count that's kind of pushing, but I do agree that there's a need for actually event spaces, the hotel component. Certainly, I believe that there's a hotel study, but I come back to the fact that 70 to 200 seems like a fairly, I guess, a disproportionate towards hotels. So catering a little more towards permanent residents would be helpful, but I also understand there's probably going to be programmatic, limitations based on, hey, I got an anchor. So totally understand that as well. So overall, I'd love to see a little more, I guess, diversity as storefronts for me. Overall, however, I am excited about the prospect. This is a center. The street front is going to be greatly improved. I think anything would be a great improvement. So, but I think really articulating public benefits, as people have said in the past, and quantifying those things will be important to saying this is why it merits a PUD. So other than that, do we have closing thoughts by others on the commission? I think that's it. Petitioner, any closing thoughts on your end?
I'll say one thing in closing. One of the comments or questions about the design of the building. I promise everybody here it's going to be beautiful and hopefully iconic. That'll be in the eyes of the beholder, but it'll be an amazing building. It'll look amazing.
We appreciate that. So thank you so much for your time. We're right at 9:02. And so without further comments, I think we can move to the next item on our agenda. Give me just a second, which is communications to Planning Commission, sorry, public comment. So Thank you, petitioners, for joining us tonight. Hopefully the feedback was helpful. And we are moving to public comment. Persons may speak for 3 minutes. For Zoom participants, please raise your hand, or for phone callers, please press *9 and *6 to unmute your phones. Thank you. Mix Kelly, do we have any public comments?
Oh, sorry to interrupt, but do you want to bring Commissioner Sauvé back?
Oh,
Yes,
yes.
certainly. Thank you for the reminder.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
She has been promoted. There are currently 5 hands raised, and our first caller is Adam Yuskevich. You have permission to address the commission.
Hi, this is Adam Juskevich, 1430 Las Vegas Drive. I just like to say a few things about 125 South Main. I'm really excited by this project. The current building, the Chase Bank, creates an unpleasant dead space on the block, which, you know, really, I think with banks, like if you're not a customer of that bank, it's always going to be kind of a dead space, but it's right now just kind of a stone wall. So it'll be great to have more people here with a lobby and restaurant space and people going in and out. I think the ideas around activating the alley are really cool. As some commissioners mentioned, I'd love to see more details about the alley. When I first saw this, I was concerned about the amount of hotel space versus housing, but I think we do have a need for more hotel space downtown, so it isn't really a big issue for me. I think we need both, and 75 units of housing it's really nothing to sneeze at. I agree it can take some pressure off the short-term rental market, which has been an ongoing public conversation. So I agree with some of the comments from commissioners around that. And a lot of our hotel space right now is out by the freeway ring. So I appreciate seeing more rooms coming to downtown. The stacker parking is interesting. The library has some wild news photos of a similar parkmobile system, though I think that was above ground at the old St. Joe's. And it'll be really interesting to see if the petitioner goes forward with this. And I will reiterate, I have zero concerns about the height. This proposal is right in the heart of our downtown core with other tall buildings nearby. It's exactly where we expect tall buildings to be built. And while it's tall for Ann Arbor, it isn't out of scale with other tall buildings in the city. It's barely taller than Tower Plaza. Ann Arbor is the 5th largest city in the state. It's hardly a small town anymore and hasn't been since before I was born. I look forward to following this project as it works its way through the process, and I hope to see it join our skyline, and I hope to get a chance to visit the rooftop terrace. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly, you are on mute.
Thank you. Our next caller is Luis Vasquez. You have permission to address the commission for 3 minutes.
Hi, good evening, Luis Vasquez. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm a resident of Upper Lower Town, 909 Barton Drive, and also have a property at 1442 Pontiac Trail. I'm excited about both of these proposed developments. I think Adam Juskevich just stole my thunder. But yeah, I think both of these projects check off a lot of boxes for us in Ann Arbor, brings much needed housing, and has been mentioned, the proliferation of Airbnbs and Verbos around Ann Arbor demonstrates the need for more hotel rooms for certain in Ann Arbor and downtown in particular. So yes, I hope both of these projects move towards approval and add to the city's tax base, the city's housing stock, and brings more neighbors to live with us in Ann Arbor and enjoy our quality of life. Thanks for hearing me out, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez.
There are 3 more hands raised. The next caller is Adam Goodman. You have 3 minutes to address the commission.
Hi there. Adam Goodman, 400 Virginia Avenue. I am also excited by both of these projects, and thanks to the petitioners for bringing them forward. On 228 Packard, I think it's really important to emphasize that U of M has kind of changed the game in this whole area of town, and U of M is not beholden to our comprehensive plan or our zoning ordinance, which didn't necessarily contemplate that there'd be a couple huge dormitories about to be built right there. So I think it's really important for the city to react in a way that acknowledges this change instead of trying to ignore it, and does so very expediently, because I hear some of the commissioners saying that we need a broader reevaluation of that area, and I do understand that, but I think waiting for the comprehensive plan to be done and then for all of the actual ordinance revisions that would follow from that is going to take way too long, especially when we have a really good project right at our doorstep, that's going to be ready to go sooner than that. I think the elephant in the room for that discussion was there's a lot of talk about FAR and premiums. Well, I believe it's next week. Y'all are scheduled to have a conversation and maybe a vote about whether to advance a proposal to get rid of all of that. So I think it would be interesting to ask the developer, if D1 changes, does this still have to be a PUD, or does that open up more possibilities? As far as 125 South Main goes, this sounds awesome. Getting rid of a dead old bank storefront and replacing it with productive use. I'd love to see that. I think, I've been frustrated forever that we pushed all of our hotels out into the most car dependent hellscapes that our city has to offer. So it's not just that we need more hotel beds, it's that we need more hotel beds in walkable areas of our city, especially. And so this really does meet a very big need in our community, in addition to providing long-term housing. And, finally, I just, it kind of bugs me that Tower Plaza is, what dominates our skyline. It's not the worst building, but I think we can do better. And I hope this team will do exactly that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman.
Our next caller is phone number ending in 534. You have permission to address the commission.
Good evening again. This is Tom Stolberg. I want to talk about the first development. One of the community benefits that they could possibly add there would be additional stormwater management, significant additional stormwater management above the requirements as a way to deal with the fact that they are in a floodplain. And I'm not sure what the date of their FEMA map they're working off of. What we do know is that we've had more severe events, and the severity and the frequency of severe events of stormwater keep increasing with climate change. So a lot of our floodplain drawings may be out of date. They may have more flood water now than they realize, and more coming than they realize. I know they're not in the floodway, but the floodplain. But that would be a good place to look for a community benefit, be offering more stormwater management. We're going to need that everywhere. In terms of parking minimums messing up with the FAR, I'd like everybody to remember that one of the results of the Lower Town lawsuit was the elimination of the planned projects part of our ordinance, and the replacement by some flexible development options in our UDC. There's one that's still on the books, but it was superseded. For about a year, developers had the ability to eliminate the parking minimum by providing affordable housing, for example. So we superseded that by just eliminating parking altogether as a requirement, which is messing up the whole FAR. I sure wish we hadn't superseded. I sure be interested to see some of the measurements of allowing developers to remove eliminate the parking minimum in exchange for affordable housing. Speaking of affordable housing, another idea for the second applicant would be to significantly increase the affordable housing contribution. If you want that much more FAR, look at the formula and what affordable housing contributions are to get up to the maximum FAR. And then if you're going to exceed that maximum FAR, turn that into a similar number of affordable housing units or dollars to provide a suggestion on a community benefit that is above and beyond what is currently on the books. In terms of hotel, we know there's a lot of people needing hotel rooms during the peak days, football days, art fair, et cetera. We also know that there's a lot of vacancy across town on average on the off days that aren't those high events. The question is, can we have some very specific data about what that is? If we put a hotel downtown, will it be full on the days that aren't the peak days? Or will there be significant vacancy like there certainly is now on average? I know it's on average, but the applicant can provide better data, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stolberg. Ms. Kelly?
There's one more caller this evening, and that is Alex Lowe. You have permission to address the commission.
Hi, this is Alex Lowe calling in from Southeast Eastern Arbor. At first glance, I really do think that both of these projects are net improvements on what currently exists at those locations. And I think they both provide great environmental benefits in the form of reduced vehicle miles traveled, more efficient building types, at least for the one on Packard Street than currently exist there. There are a lot of improvements over what we've currently got. I do have to disagree with an earlier caller, Mr. Juskevich, about not having a concern about the height or the hotel space. I have a concern about the height in both cases, as these both seem to be a little bit short to me. The one on the one on Packard, it seems like 12th floor should be the minimum, not the maximum. So maybe we should be working on some additional floors there, and then if that ends up working out, maybe they don't need to reduce the amount of parking because they'll get 0.6 parkings per unit that way just fine. I would prefer to see a better use of the streetscape, but it is what it is. On the South Main part, I'm not so concerned about the amount of hotel space in terms of absolute numbers, more in terms of the comparison to residential. I think 50-50 would be more reasonable. And I think a good way to do that would be to take what is currently hotel and residential in the current site plan, convert that to all hotel, and then double the height of the building and build the rest of it with residential. Thanks, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly, do we have any other callers?
There are no other callers.
Okay, with that, I will close public comment. Next item is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, yeah, we just say bye. All right, well, thank you so much, guys. I appreciate everyone's time. Have a great night. Bye, guys.
Have a good evening.
Bye.